I quit the force 3 years ago. 22 years wearing the badge, and I walked away with nothing but a pension and a German shepherd they said was too old to work anymore. They called it retirement. I called it the end. My name is Jack, and for 3 years I did what every burned-out cop does. I drank coffee that got cold while I stared at walls. I avoided calls from former partners who still believed the system worked. I told myself I was done chasing ghosts. Then one morning Ghost wouldn't let me sleep past 5 a.m. He stood at the door with that look. The same look he used to give me before a call came in. Before everything went to hell. I tried to ignore him. Told him those days were over. But Ghost has never been good at taking no for an answer. He dropped something at my feet. An old case file. One I thought I had thrown away years ago. Thought I had burned in the fireplace on a night when the guilt got too heavy and the whiskey didn't help anymore. But somehow this file survived. Or maybe Ghost had hidden it. Saved it for the right moment. The moment when I would finally be ready to face what I had done. Or more accurately, what I hadn't done. The name on the folder was Sarah Chen, 23 years old. Found dead in her apartment 4 years ago. The department closed it in 48 hours. Suicide by overdose. Case closed. Move along. Nothing to see here. Except her mother never believed it. And neither did I. But I was told to let it go. Orders from up top. Too messy. Too political. The boyfriend was connected. Connected in ways that made careers disappear and pensions evaporate. So we buried it. I buried it. I buried her. Ghost didn't care about any of that. He just kept staring at me with those amber eyes. Eyes that had seen me at my worst. The same eyes that had watched me break down in the parking lot the night I turned in my badge. The same eyes that never judged me for all the cases I couldn't solve. All the people I couldn't save. All the compromises I made to keep my job and lost my soul anyway. I looked at Sarah Chen's photo. It was clipped to the inside of the folder. A candid shot. Young. Smiling. Full of life, in a way that made the official story feel like a slap in the face. She was at the beach. Wind in her hair. Sun on her face. The kind of photo that screams, I have everything to live for. Her mother had given me that photo 4 years ago. Begged me to keep looking. Begged me to not give up on her daughter. Told me Sarah would never take drugs. Would never take her own life. Had too many dreams. Too many plans. Too much love left to give. I remembered nodding. Remembered taking her hands in mine and promising I would do everything I could. Remembered the hope in her eyes when she thanked me. And then I remember doing absolutely nothing. Because that is what the department wanted. That is what the deputy chief made very clear in his office when he called me in 3 days after Sarah's death. No witnesses. Just him and me, and a very simple conversation about career trajectories and pension eligibility, and how sometimes the greater good means letting certain cases rest in peace. He never said cover it up. Never said falsify evidence. Never said anything that could be used against him later. He was too smart for that. Too careful. Too protected by years of playing the political game. He just said the boyfriend had been cleared. The evidence pointed to accidental overdose. The family was grieving and needed closure. And that continuing to investigate would be seen as harassment. Possibly insubordination. Maybe even cause for termination. I was 43 years old then. Had a mortgage that was underwater. Had Ghost to take care of. Had 19 years in and could see the 20-year mark that meant full pension. Could see retirement. Could see safety. So I made a choice. I closed the file. I wrote up my report. I recommended the case be concluded as accidental overdose. And I told Sarah's mother we had done everything possible. Watched her face crumble. Watched her realize I was lying. Watched her walk out of the station with her shoulders bent, like I had just put a weight on them that would never come off. 3 months later, I stopped sleeping through the night. Started waking up at 3 a.m., seeing Sarah's face. Seeing her mother's face. 6 months later, I couldn't look at myself in the mirror without wanting to put my fist through it. A year later, I turned in my badge and told everyone it was time. That I had given enough. That 20 years was enough. That I wanted to spend time with Ghost before he got too old. That I wanted to travel. To fish. To do all the things cops say they will do when they retire. Nobody questioned it. Nobody cared. Burned-out cops quit every day. The department throws them a party. Gives them a plaque. Shakes their hand and forgets them before they even make it to the parking lot. I was just another statistic. Another good detective who couldn't handle the weight anymore. Another casualty of a system that grinds people down until there is nothing left. Except it wasn't the weight of the job that broke me. It wasn't the long hours or the danger or the paperwork or any of the things cops complain about. It was the weight of knowing I had let Sarah Chen's killer walk free. It was the weight of knowing I had chosen my pension over her life. Her justice. Her truth. And now Ghost was standing at my door with her file in his mouth. Waiting for me to finally do what I should have done 4 years ago. What I should have done the moment the deputy chief told me to back off. I looked at the clock on my nightstand. 5:15 a.m. The sun wasn't even up yet. The world was still dark. Still quiet. Still pretending everything was fine. Ghost didn't move. Just kept those eyes locked on me. Patient. Unwavering. Like he had all the time in the world. Like he knew I was going to say yes. Because deep down, Ghost knew something I was still trying to learn. We were never meant to quit. Some things don't let you quit. Some ghosts don't stay buried, no matter how deep you dig the hole. And some dogs know exactly when their handler needs to remember who he used to be. Before the compromises. Before the fear. Before he traded his integrity for a pension that didn't buy him a single night of sleep. I sat up. My back hurt. Everything hurt these days. 3 years of sitting on a couch will do that. 3 years of avoiding the world. 3 years of pretending I was fine. I picked up the file. The paper felt thin. Fragile. Like it might disintegrate in my hands. Ghost's tail wagged once. Just once. A single acknowledgement that we were finally on the same page. Then he walked to the door and waited. Patient as always. Time to go to work. Sarah Chen was a medical student at the University of Washington. Top of her class every single semester. Dean's List. Honor Society. The kind of student professors write recommendation letters about using words like exceptional and once in a generation. She volunteered at free clinics in the International District every weekend. Spent her summers doing medical mission work in rural communities. Had been accepted into a surgical residency program at Johns Hopkins, one of the most competitive programs in the country. She was exactly the kind of person who had their whole life mapped out with precision, who had worked too hard and sacrificed too much to throw it away on a moment of weakness. No history of drug use. Not even marijuana. Not even once. Her medical records were clean. Alcohol use social only. Smoking never. Drug use never. Her friends said she barely drank at parties. Wouldn't nurse a single beer for an entire night. Was always the designated driver. Always the responsible one. The one who made sure everyone got home safe. Her toxicology report told a completely different story. Fentanyl. Enough to kill 3 people. Mixed with traces of alcohol and benzodiazepines. The kind of cocktail that shuts down your respiratory system before you even know what is happening. Before you can call for help. Before you can fight back. The medical examiner ruled it accidental overdose. Possible suicide. Manner of death, undetermined. Which is code for we don't really know, but we need to close this case and move on to the next body. The boyfriend found her. Name was Marcus Webb. 26 years old. Son of City Councilman Richard Webb. The same Richard Webb who sat on the budget committee that determined police department funding. The same Richard Webb who had aspirations for mayor. Maybe governor. Maybe higher. Marcus worked for his father's real estate development company. Vice President of Acquisitions. Which meant he had a fancy title and showed up to ribbon-cutting ceremonies. Drove a BMW 7 Series. Lived in a condo in Belltown that cost more than most people make in 5 years. Wore suits that cost more than my monthly pension. He called 911 at 11:42 p.m. on October 15th. The recording was preserved in the case file. I had listened to it so many times I could recite it from memory. His voice cracking, crying, panicking, begging the operator to send help immediately. Said he had just gotten home from a business dinner. Found Sarah unresponsive in bed. Tried CPR the way they teach you in those corporate first aid classes. Nothing worked. She wasn't breathing. Wasn't moving. Skin was cold. First responders arrived 8 minutes later. Pronounced her dead at the scene. Marcus was inconsolable, according to the police report. Had to be sedated by paramedics. Kept asking how this could happen. Kept saying she was fine when he left. Kept saying they were supposed to get married. Or at least, that is what everyone said. What everyone reported. What went into the official record. I listened to that 911 call 20 times in the first week. 40 times by the end of the investigation. And every single time something felt off. The panic sounded real. The crying sounded genuine. But there was something underneath it. Something that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. Something rehearsed. Like an actor who had practiced their lines just a little too much. Who knew exactly where to put the emphasis. Where to let the voice crack. Where to pause for effect. I brought it up to Davidson. My partner at the time. The lead detective on the case. 28 years on the force. Good cop once upon a time. Had solved murders that seemed impossible. Had put away killers that everyone else said were untouchable. But he was 2 years from retirement and 3 years from a pension he couldn't afford to lose. Had a daughter in college. Had a mortgage. Had all the same fears I had. He told me I was hearing things that weren't there. That grief makes people sound strange. That trauma does weird things to the voice. That Marcus Webb had just lost his girlfriend, and I was looking for problems where none existed. Maybe he was right. Or maybe he just didn't want to look too close. Because Marcus Webb had an alibi that was airtight. Bulletproof. The kind of alibi that ends investigations before they start. He was at his father's campaign fundraiser at the Rainier Club from 7 p.m. until midnight. One of those rubber chicken dinner events where rich people pay $1,000 a plate to feel good about themselves. Security footage showed him arriving at 6:50 p.m. Showed him leaving at 12:05 a.m. 37 people confirmed seeing him there throughout the night, including 2 city council members, a state senator, the deputy mayor, and enough wealthy donors to fund a small country. Sarah's time of death was estimated between 9 and 11 p.m., based on body temperature and rigor mortis. Marcus was on camera at the fundraiser during that entire window, talking to donors, shaking hands, giving a speech about his father's commitment to affordable housing. Ironic given that his father's company was buying up apartment buildings and doubling the rent. But nobody seemed to notice that. He was smiling for photos. Posing with his father. playing the dutiful son. He couldn't have been in two places at once. The Rainier Club was 40 minutes from Sarah's apartment in Capitol Hill. Even with no traffic. Even breaking every speed limit. The timeline didn't work. So the case became simple. Elementary. The kind of case that solves itself if you don't ask too many questions. Sarah must have taken the drugs herself. Maybe it was stress. Medical school is brutal. 80-hour weeks. Constant exams. The pressure to be perfect. Maybe it was depression she had hidden from everyone. High-functioning depression. The kind where you smile during the day and fall apart at night. Maybe it was just a tragic accident. A young woman experimenting with something she didn't understand. Trying to relax after a hard week. One mistake. One miscalculation. One dose too strong. The evidence seemed to support it. Her apartment had been searched thoroughly. No signs of forced entry. No broken windows. No kicked-in doors. No signs of a struggle. No overturned furniture. No defensive wounds on her body. Her purse was on the counter. Wallet inside with cash and credit cards. Her keys in the bowl by the door where she always left them. Her laptop on the coffee table. Her jewelry box untouched. Everything looked normal. Peaceful. Like she had just gone to sleep and never woken up. Except for one thing. One detail that bothered me then and still bothers me now. Sarah's phone. It had been wiped. Factory reset. Every message, every photo, every call log, every app, every piece of data. Gone. Erased. Like it never existed. When I asked Marcus about the phone, he didn't hesitate. Didn't pause. Didn't show any sign that the question bothered him. He said Sarah had been complaining about her phone running slow for weeks. Said it kept freezing. Said apps wouldn't open. Said she had finally gotten fed up and reset it 3 days before she died. Said it was no big deal. Said she did it all the time. Just part of maintaining your device. I asked if we could check his phone. See if there were any text messages between them that might give us insight into her state of mind. Any arguments. Any signs she was struggling. Anything that might explain why a healthy 23-year-old medical student would suddenly overdose on fentanyl. He said of course. Didn't even hesitate. Handed his phone right over. Unlocked it himself. Said he had nothing to hide. Said he wanted to help in any way he could. His messages with Sarah were mundane. Boring. The kind of texts couples send when they have been together long enough that everything becomes routine. What do you want for dinner? I love you. Miss you. Can't wait to see you. Normal couple stuff. Nothing that suggested she was struggling. Nothing that suggested anything was wrong. Nothing that suggested she was about to die. But here is what bothered me. What kept me up at night. What made me go back to that case file over and over until my eyes burned. Sarah Chen was afraid of needles. Had been since childhood. Severe needle phobia. The kind that required medical intervention. There was a note in her medical records from when she was 12 years old. Patient experiences extreme anxiety and vasovagal response when exposed to needles. Requires sedation for routine blood draws. Has history of fainting during vaccinations. Recommend behavioral therapy and anxiolytic medication for future procedures. Her mother confirmed it when I interviewed her. Said Sarah would have panic attacks before doctor's appointments. Would cry before getting shots. Had passed out multiple times during routine medical procedures. Had to be held down by nurses when she was younger. It was a real phobia. Clinical. Documented. Not something you just get over. And yet we were supposed to believe that this woman who couldn't handle a flu shot decided to inject herself with fentanyl. Used a needle to pump poison directly into her own veins. Voluntarily. Intentionally. Without anyone forcing her. The medical examiner found the injection site on her left inner arm. Right in the antecubital fossa. The same spot nurses use for blood draws. Clean entry. Professional technique. Minimal bruising. Like someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Like someone with medical training. Or at least someone who had done this before. But there were no other marks. No track marks. No old scars. No evidence of previous injection drug use. Her arms were clean except for that single puncture wound. The one that killed her. I brought this up in the case meeting 2 days after her death. Said it didn't make sense. Said we should investigate further. Said we should interview her friends and classmates and professors and find out if anyone had ever seen her use drugs. Said we should search Marcus Webb's apartment and his car and his office. Said we should check his financials and see if there were any large cash withdrawals. Said we should do what we do in every suspicious death. Actually investigate. The deputy chief was in that meeting. Sitting at the head of the table. Arms crossed. Face impassive. He let me talk. Let me lay out my concerns. Let me explain why I thought this case deserved more than 48 hours. Then he looked at me across that conference table with eyes that had seen 30 years of politics and compromise, and said, "Sometimes people surprise us." Said maybe Sarah had been hiding an addiction. Said maybe the pressure had gotten to her. Said maybe we would never know what really happened in her final moments. Then he said the magic words. The words that end investigations before they start. Marcus Webb has been cleared. He has an airtight alibi. 37 witnesses. Video footage. He wasn't there when she died. Let's focus on the facts we have, not the theories we wish we had. Translation: shut up and close the case. But I didn't shut up. Not right away. I kept digging. Kept pushing. Kept asking questions that nobody wanted to answer. I talked to Sarah's friends from medical school. Her study group. The people she spent 80 hours a week with. Everyone said the same thing. Sarah was happy. Focused. Excited about her future. She had just matched into her dream residency program. Had been celebrating for weeks. Was making plans to move to Baltimore. Looking at apartments. Talking about finally becoming a surgeon. She wasn't depressed. Wasn't struggling. Wasn't showing any signs of someone who was about to die. I talked to her professors. They said she was one of the best students they had ever taught. Brilliant. Dedicated. Kind. The kind of doctor patients dream about having. The kind of doctor the world needs more of. I talked to her classmates. They said she was always the first one to offer help. Always the one staying late to quiz people before exams. Always the one organizing study sessions and bringing coffee and making sure everyone was okay. She was a leader. A friend. Someone people looked up to. Not someone who secretly used drugs. But then I talked to her maid of honor. A woman named Jennifer Park. They had been best friends since undergrad. Roommates for 3 years. Knew each other better than anyone. And Jennifer told me something different. Something that changed everything. She said Sarah had been pulling away from Marcus in the weeks before she died. Had been making excuses to not see him as much. Had stopped wearing her engagement ring to class. When Jennifer asked her about it, Sarah said she was fine. Said everything was great. Said wedding planning was just stressful. But Jennifer could tell she was lying. Could see it in her eyes. Could hear it in her voice. Sarah was scared. Jennifer didn't know of what. Didn't know why. Sarah wouldn't tell her. Just kept saying she was handling it. That she would figure it out. That everything would be okay. 2 weeks before Sarah died, Jennifer saw bruises on her arms. Small ones. Like finger marks. Like someone had grabbed her. When Jennifer asked about them, Sarah laughed it off. Said she had bumped into a door. Said she was clumsy. Said it was nothing. But her laugh was hollow. Empty. The kind of laugh that is really a cry for help. 1 week before Sarah died, Jennifer got a strange text from her at 2 a.m. It said, "If anything ever happens to me, look at Marcus." Jennifer called her immediately. Asked her what she meant. Sarah said she was just being paranoid. Said she had been watching too many true crime documentaries. Said forget about it. But Jennifer didn't forget. And when Sarah died, Jennifer went to the police. Told them about the text. Told them about the bruises. Told them about Sarah pulling away. Told them about the fear she had seen in her best friend's eyes. The detective who took her statement was Davidson, my partner. He wrote it all down, put it in the case file, and then he did absolutely nothing with it. When I found Jennifer's statement buried in the file, 3 days after the death, I asked Davidson why he hadn't followed up. Why he hadn't interviewed Marcus about the bruises. Why he hadn't asked him about Sarah's behavior change. He said it was hearsay. Said Jennifer was grieving and reading too much into things. Said couples fight. Said Sarah probably had cold feet about the wedding. Said it didn't mean anything. Said Marcus had an alibi anyway, so what did it matter? I said it mattered because it established pattern. Established motive. Established that Marcus Webb wasn't the grieving boyfriend he pretended to be. Davidson told me to drop it. Told me the case was closed. Told me to move on. I didn't listen. I went to Sarah's apartment myself. The one she had shared with Marcus for 6 months before her death. A nice place in Capitol Hill. 2-bedroom. Hardwood floors. Big windows. The kind of place young professional couples post on Instagram. Crime scene techs had already processed it. Taken photos. Collected evidence. Released it back to Marcus. He had already moved out. Already packed up Sarah's things and given them to her mother. Already erased her from his life like she never existed. The landlord let me in. Said the place would be cleaned and re-rented within a week. Said he felt terrible about what happened, but business is business. I walked through that apartment for 2 hours. Ghost was with me. He had been my K-9 partner for 8 years at that point. Trained in narcotics detection. Cadaver search. Evidence recovery. He was the best dog I ever worked with. Better than most humans. I let him sniff. Let him explore. Let him do what he was trained to do. He went straight to the bedroom. The bedroom where Sarah had been found. Started alerting on the carpet near the bed. That focused stare. That rigid posture. That intensity that said something is here. I got down on my hands and knees. Looked at the carpet. It had been cleaned. Recently. You could still smell the chemical scent. See the slight discoloration. Someone had shampooed this carpet. Scrubbed it. Tried to remove something. Ghost kept alerting. Kept staring at that spot. I pulled out my fingerprint powder. Dusted the nightstand. The lamp. The bed frame. Found dozens of prints. Most would belong to Sarah and Marcus. Some to friends who had visited. Nothing unusual. Then I checked the closet. Sarah's side was empty. Marcus had taken everything. Her clothes. Her shoes. Her boxes. All gone. But Ghost was interested in the back corner. Kept pawing at the baseboard. I looked closer. The baseboard was loose. Just slightly. Like someone had removed it and put it back, but hadn't nailed it properly. I pulled on it gently. It came away. Behind it was a small gap. A hiding space. Just big enough for something small. Inside was a plastic bag. And inside that bag was a phone. Sarah's phone. The one that had been factory reset. The one that supposedly contained nothing useful. Someone had hidden it in the wall. And someone had hoped nobody would ever find it. I bagged the phone, photographed the location, documented everything. Then I called Davidson, told him what I found, told him we needed to reopen the case. He arrived 30 minutes later, looked at the phone, looked at the baseboard, looked at me. Then he said the words that would eventually end my career. "Jack, don't do this. Don't make this harder than it needs to be." I asked him what he meant. He said the case was closed. Said the deputy chief had made that clear. Said finding a hidden phone didn't change anything. Said it was probably Sarah who hid it. Said she probably didn't want Marcus to see something. Old photos of an ex-boyfriend. Messages she wasn't proud of. Something embarrassing. Said we couldn't prove it meant anything sinister. I said we needed to have the phone analyzed. Needed to recover the data. Needed to see what was on it before the reset. He said no. Said we didn't have a warrant. Said the case was closed, so we couldn't get a warrant. Said taking that phone out of the apartment would be a legal search and seizure. Said it would be thrown out of court. Said it would ruin any future prosecution. Said I needed to leave it alone. I looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the fear in his eyes. The same fear I would see in my own eyes a few weeks later. He was scared. Scared of losing his pension. Scared of the deputy chief. Scared of what would happen if he went against orders. I understood that fear. Lived with it every day. But I wasn't ready to let it control me. Not yet. I took the phone anyway. Walked out of that apartment with evidence that could break the case wide open. Davidson didn't try to stop me. Just watched me leave. Shook his head. Said I was making a mistake. Said I would regret it. He was right about that. The next morning, I was called into the deputy chief's office. No warning. No explanation. Just a terse message from his secretary saying I needed to report immediately. I brought the phone with me. Thought maybe if I showed him the evidence, he would understand. Would let me investigate properly. I was naive. Stupid. Still believed the system worked. The deputy chief didn't let me sit down. Stood behind his desk. Arms crossed. Face like stone. Asked me what the hell I thought I was doing. I told him I found new evidence in the Sarah Chen case. Told him we needed to reopen. Told him there were too many unanswered questions. He cut me off. Said the case was closed. Said I had been ordered to move on. Said I was ignoring a direct command. I tried to explain. Tried to show him the phone. Tried to tell him about Jennifer's statement and Sarah's needle phobia and the hidden phone and everything that didn't add up. He didn't want to hear it. Said Marcus Webb had been cleared by a thorough investigation. Said his alibi was airtight. Said I was harassing a grieving family. Said City Councilman Webb had already called the mayor to complain about police harassment. Said the mayor had called the chief. Said the chief was not happy. Then he said something I will never forget. He said, "Detective Harper, you have 20 years of good service. Don't throw it away over a closed case. Don't throw away your pension over a girl who made bad choices. Go home. Take a few days off. Come back ready to focus on cases that matter. Cases that matter. Like Sarah Chen didn't matter. Like her life was worth less than my pension. Like justice was negotiable." I stood there in his office. Held that phone in my hand. And I had a choice. I could keep pushing. Could go over his head. Could take the phone to the FBI. Could call a reporter. Could do what was right. Or I could protect myself. Protect my career. Protect my future. I chose wrong. I gave him the phone. Watched him put it in his desk drawer. Watched him lock it. Watched years of evidence disappear. He said, "Good decision, Jack. Take a week off. Paid leave. Come back refreshed. We need good detectives like you. But I want your word that this case is over." I gave him my word. And I hated myself for it. I went home, sat on my couch, looked at Ghost. He looked back at me with those eyes that always knew, always understood. I had failed. Failed Sarah. Failed her mother. Failed every victim who counted on me to fight for them. 3 months later, I couldn't sleep. 6 months later, I couldn't look in mirrors. A year later, I couldn't pretend anymore. I turned in my badge, walked away, told myself I was done. But Ghost knew better. Ghost always knew better. And 3 years later, he dropped that case file at my feet. Because some cases don't let you walk away. Some ghosts follow you home. And sometimes the only way to find peace is to finish what you started. Even if it costs you everything, the apartment building was still there. Same beige paint peeling in the same places. Same broken intercom buzzing with static. Same smell of mildew and old carpet in the hallway. 4 years later and nothing had changed. Except everything had changed. Sarah Chen's apartment had been rented out twice since her death. First to a young couple who moved out after 3 months. Said they felt uncomfortable there. Said they heard things at night. Said it just didn't feel right. The landlord didn't tell them someone had died there. Not required by Washington state law unless specifically asked. The current tenant was a grad student, 24 years old, studying computer science at UW. Name was Michael according to the mailbox. I knocked on the door at 7 a.m. on a Saturday. Probably not the best time to show up unannounced, but I couldn't wait. Couldn't give myself time to talk myself out of it. Couldn't let fear win again. Michael answered in sweatpants and a t-shirt. Hair sticking up. Eyes half closed. Looked annoyed until he saw Ghost. Then he looked nervous. Most people get nervous around German shepherds. Especially ones that look like Ghost. Scarred. Alert. All business. I apologized for the early hour. Showed him my old badge. The one I wasn't supposed to carry anymore. The one that technically held no authority. Told him I used to work a case in the building. Said I needed to check something. He asked what kind of case. I said I couldn't discuss details of an ongoing investigation. Which was technically true if you considered my investigation ongoing. Which I did. He looked at Ghost again. Ghost sat perfectly still. Watching. Waiting. Being the good boy he always was. Michael shrugged. Said he had to leave for his research lab anyway. Said I could look around but don't mess anything up. Said his roommate was still asleep, so keep it quiet. I thanked him. Waited for him to grab his backpack and leave. Then Ghost and I entered the apartment where Sarah Chen had spent her last moments alive. The layout hadn't changed. Living room straight ahead. Kitchen to the right. Bedroom down the hall. But everything else was different. Different furniture. Different posters on the walls. Different books on the shelves. Michael and his roommate had made it their own. Erased Sarah's presence completely. Except Ghost could still smell her. I watched him work. This was the Ghost I remembered from our years on the force. Before retirement. Before I gave up. Before everything fell apart. Focused. Methodical. Professional. He moved through the living room with purpose. Sniffed along the baseboards. Checked corners. Investigated areas most people would never notice. He ignored the couch. Ignored the TV. Ignored the clutter of college life. Went straight to what mattered. I followed him. Let him lead. That was how we always worked. He found things I couldn't. Smelled things I couldn't. Knew things I could only guess at. He stopped at the hallway. The hallway leading to the bedroom. The bedroom where Sarah had been found. where Marcus had called 911, where her life had ended and his lies had begun. Ghost looked back at me. That look that said, "Are you ready for this?" I nodded. We walked down the hallway together. The bedroom door was open. Light streamed through the window. Morning sun, making everything look clean and innocent. 2 beds now instead of 1. Michael and his roommate saving money by sharing. Posters of bands I didn't recognize. Clothes on the floor. Pizza boxes stacked in the corner. The chaos of young men living without parents. Ghost didn't care about any of that. He walked directly to the spot where Sarah's bed would have been. The spot marked in police photos. The spot where she had taken her last breath. He sniffed. Circled. Sat down. That was his alert. His way of saying, something happened here. Something important. I pulled out my phone. Opened the photos I had saved from the original case file. The ones I had downloaded before I turned in my badge. The ones I wasn't supposed to have. Compared them to what I was seeing now. The carpet had been replaced. New paint on the walls. New light fixture on the ceiling. But the room dimensions were the same. The window placement was the same. The closet was in the same spot. I walked to the closet. Opened it. Inside were clothes and shoes and the normal detritus of college students. Nothing unusual. Nothing suspicious. But Ghost was interested. Very interested. He pushed past me. Nosed his way into the closet. Started pawing at the back corner. At the baseboard. I pulled out the clothes. Moved boxes. Created space. Got down on my hands and knees. Used my phone flashlight. That is when I saw it. The same thing I had seen 4 years ago. A small gap where the baseboard met the wall. The board was newer than the others. Different color. Different finish. Someone had replaced it. Recently. I looked closer. The nails were new. Shiny. Not painted over. Not aged like the others. I pulled at the baseboard gently. It came away easily. Too easily. Like it had been removed multiple times. Behind it was a hollow space. Just big enough to hide something small. Just like before. But this time the space was empty. Whatever had been there was gone. I sat back on my heels. Felt my heart racing. This was it. This was proof. Proof that someone had used this hiding spot. Proof that the phone I found 4 years ago wasn't just Sarah hiding something embarrassing. Proof that someone was still using this apartment. Still coming back. Still had access. I took photos. Documented everything. The baseboard. The nails. The hollow space. The measurements. Then I heard a sound from the living room. Footsteps. Heavy. Deliberate. Not Michael the grad student. Not his roommate. Someone else. Ghost heard it too. Went rigid. Low growl building in his throat. I stood up. Moved to the bedroom door. Looked down the hallway. A man stood in the living room. Tall. Well-dressed. Dark suit. Expensive shoes. Not a college student. Not a neighbor. He was looking at the photos on my phone that I had left on the coffee table. The police photos. The crime scene photos. The photos I shouldn't have. He looked up. Saw me. Smiled. It wasn't a friendly smile. Marcus Webb said, "Hello, Detective Harper." Or should I say, former Detective Harper. I heard you retired. Funny seeing you here. Especially in my old apartment. Ghost moved in front of me. Protective stance. Ready to attack if needed. Marcus didn't seem concerned. Kept smiling. Said, "That's the famous Ghost, right? Sarah used to love that dog. Used to talk about him all the time. Said you two were partners. Said you were one of the good cops. Guess she was wrong about that." I asked him what he was doing here. He said he owned the building now. Bought it 2 years ago through one of his father's companies. Said he liked to check on his properties personally. Make sure everything was in order. Said Michael had texted him that a cop was snooping around. Said he was concerned. Wanted to make sure there wasn't a problem. I said there was no problem. Just following up on an old case. He laughed. Said 4 years old. That's pretty old. Most people would call that closed. Would call that ancient history. Would call that something to forget and move on from. But not you, Jack. You never could let things go, could you? That's what Sarah used to say. Said you were stubborn. Said you actually cared about justice. Too bad caring doesn't change anything. I felt Ghost tense beside me. Felt my own hands forming fists. Marcus noticed. Said, careful, detective. Assaulting a private citizen. That would look bad. Especially for someone who already had to retire under questionable circumstances. Wouldn't want to lose that pension completely, would you? He was threatening me. Right to my face. No subtlety. No pretense. Just raw power and the confidence of someone who had never faced consequences. I took a breath. Forced myself to stay calm. Asked Marcus how he knew I was here. He pulled out his phone. Showed me an app. Security cameras. He had cameras in all his properties. Said it was for safety. For protection. For knowing exactly who came and went. The camera in the hallway had caught me entering. Had sent an alert to his phone. He had been here in 15 minutes. Fast response time for someone who supposedly had nothing to hide. I asked him why he still owned this building. Why he would want to own the place where his fiancée died. Most people would sell. Would move on. Would want nothing to do with a place that held so much pain. He shrugged. Said real estate was a good investment. Said location mattered more than sentiment. Said Capitol Hill was hot right now. Young professionals. Tech workers. Rising property values. Made good business sense. Besides, he said Sarah wouldn't have wanted him to make emotional decisions. She was practical. Smart. Would have understood. I asked him about the baseboard. About the hiding space. About who had access to this apartment. His smile faded. Just for a second. Just long enough for me to see the calculation behind his eyes. Then it was back. Said he had no idea what I was talking about. Said baseboards get damaged all the time. Said maintenance probably replaced it. Said he would have to check with his property manager. Said I should probably leave now. Said I was trespassing. Said I had no warrant. No authority. No right to be there. I said I had permission from the tenant. He said the tenant didn't have authority to grant access for a criminal investigation. Said anything I found would be inadmissible. Said I was contaminating a private residence without proper legal authorization. Said if I didn't leave immediately, he would call the police. The real police. The ones with actual badges. I stood my ground. Said I wasn't investigating a crime. Said I was just visiting. Just looking around. Just having a conversation. He stepped closer. Invasion of personal space. Power move. Intimidation tactic. Said, let me be clear, Jack. Sarah is dead. She killed herself. The case is closed. Has been closed for 4 years. Nobody wants you digging this up. Not the department. Not the city. Not my family. And definitely not me. Whatever you think you're going to find, you won't. Whatever you think you're going to prove, you can't. You're a retired cop with a dog and a lot of regret. That doesn't make you Sherlock Holmes. That makes you pathetic. Ghost growled. Low and dangerous. The kind of growl that meant he was done being patient. Marcus looked at Ghost. For the first time I saw fear flicker across his face. Real fear. The kind you can't fake. He took a step back. Said, "Control your dog, detective. I wouldn't want him to get hurt. That was a mistake." Threatening Ghost. Threatening the one thing in my life that mattered. I smiled. First time I had smiled in this whole conversation. Said, "Ghost is controlled, Marcus. Very controlled. But he's also very good at reading people. And right now he's reading you as a threat. I'd be careful if I were you." Marcus backed toward the door. Kept his eyes on Ghost. Said, "This isn't over, Jack. You're going to regret coming here." I said, "I've got a lot of regrets, Marcus. One more won't make a difference." He left. Slammed the door behind him. Ghost relaxed. Sat down. Looked up at me with those eyes that said, "Well, that was interesting." I pulled out my phone. Called the one person who might be able to help. The one person who owed me enough favors to do something illegal. Riley Chen. No relation to Sarah, but the coincidence of the last name felt like fate. Riley was a tech analyst. Used to work for Seattle PD in the digital forensics unit. Was brilliant. Could crack any phone. Recover any data. Find anything digital that someone thought was deleted. She had left the department same time I did. Got tired of the politics. Got tired of being told what evidence mattered and what didn't. Started her own private security firm. Made 3 times what the city paid her. Answered to nobody but herself. She picked up on the second ring. Said, "Jack Harper. Long time. Thought you died." I said, "Not yet. Need a favor." She said, "You say that like you're not about to ask me to do something illegal." I said, "I need you to recover data from a phone." She said, "Whose phone?" I said, "Sarah Chen." She went quiet. Then, the medical student case. "The one you got in trouble over." "Jack, are you insane?" I said, "Probably." "Will you help me anyway?" She sighed. Said, "Where's the phone?" I said, "That's the problem. I had it 4 years ago. Deputy Chief took it. Locked it in his desk." She said, "So you need me to break into the Deputy Chief's office and steal evidence from a closed case?" I said, "When you put it that way, it sounds bad." She said, "That's because it is bad, Jack. That's career-ending bad. That's go to jail bad." I said, "I know. But Sarah Chen deserves better than what she got." Riley was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "I liked her, you know. Sarah. Met her once at a community event. She was volunteering. Giving out flu shots. Talked to her for maybe 10 minutes. She was kind. Really genuinely kind. The kind of person who makes you think maybe the world isn't completely screwed." Then I heard she died. Heard it was an overdose. Never made sense to me. She said, "What do you need?" I told her about the hidden phone. About Marcus showing up. About how he now owned the building. About how none of it made sense. She said, "Meet me at my office in 2 hours. Bring Ghost. And Jack." She said, "This better be worth it. Because if we get caught, we're both going down." I said, "It's worth it. I hope." 2 hours later, Ghost and I were sitting in Riley's office in Fremont. Small space above a coffee shop. Minimalist. Clean. Multiple monitors on the walls. Equipment I didn't recognize. She was typing on 3 keyboards at once. Said, "The deputy chief retired last year. Moved to Arizona. Office got cleaned out. Everything went to storage or got destroyed per retention policy." I felt my stomach drop. Said, "So the phone is gone?" She said, "Probably. But." She pulled up something on her screen. Said, "Before I left the department, I may have made copies of certain case files. Digital copies. Including crime scene photos. Evidence logs. And in this case, the phone data I pulled before the deputy chief shut down the investigation." I stared at her. Said, "You had Sarah's phone data this whole time?" She said, "Had it. Forgot about it. Until you called. Then I remembered." Found the backup drive in my storage unit. Spent the last 2 hours recovering the files. They're old. Corrupted in places. But there's enough. She turned one of the monitors toward me. Said, Jack. This is bad. Really bad. On the screen were text messages. Between Sarah and Marcus. Recovered from before the factory reset. The messages started normal. Love you. Miss you. Can't wait to see you tonight. Then they changed. 3 months before Sarah died. Marcus, why were you talking to him? Sarah, who? Marcus, you know who. The guy from your study group. Sarah, he's just a friend. Marcus, I don't like how he looks at you. Sarah, you're being paranoid. Marcus, I'm being protective. There's a difference. 2 months before she died. Marcus, where were you? Sarah, at the library. Like I told you. Marcus, you weren't. I drove by. You weren't there. Sarah, I was in the basement study room. You can't see that from outside. Marcus, don't lie to me, Sarah. Sarah, I'm not lying. Why are you checking up on me? Marcus, because I love you. Because I need to know you're safe. 1 month before she died. Marcus, you need to stop. Sarah, stop what? Marcus, you know what? Talking to other guys. Wearing clothes like that. Making me look like a fool. Sarah, I'm not doing anything wrong. Marcus, everything you do is wrong lately. Maybe I made it a mistake. Maybe you're not who I thought you were. Sarah, maybe I'm not. Maybe we should take a break. Marcus, we're not taking a break. We're getting married. You made a commitment. Sarah, I need space. Marcus, you don't get space. You get me. That's all you get. 2 weeks before she died. Sarah, I want to end this. Marcus, end what? Sarah, us. This relationship. The engagement. I can't do this anymore. Marcus, you're not ending anything. Sarah, I'm serious, Marcus. This isn't healthy. You're scaring me. Marcus, I'm scaring you. That's funny. You have no idea what scary is. But you will. You will if you try to leave me. Sarah, are you threatening me? Marcus, I'm promising you. Nobody leaves me, Sarah. Nobody embarrasses me. Nobody makes me look weak. Sarah, I'm calling off the engagement. Marcus, call it off and see what happens. Call it off and see who believes your version of events. Call it off and see how medical school works out when everyone knows what kind of person you really are. 1 week before she died. Sarah, please just let me go. Marcus, never. Sarah, I'll get a restraining order. Marcus, with what evidence? Your word against mine. My father is a city councilman. Who do you think they'll believe? Sarah, someone will believe me. Marcus, nobody will believe you. Because you won't be around to tell them. Then nothing. No more messages. Because Sarah had tried to wipe the phone. Tried to destroy the evidence. But Riley had recovered it. Every word. Every threat. Every promise of violence. I looked at Ghost. He looked back at me. This was it. This was proof. Marcus Webb had threatened Sarah Chen. Had controlled her. Had isolated her. Had told her exactly what would happen if she tried to leave. And 1 week later she was dead. Riley printed everything. Every message. Every timestamp. Every piece of data that proved Marcus Webb was not the grieving boyfriend he pretended to be. She handed me a folder thick with evidence. Said, "This is explosive, Jack. This changes everything." I said, "Can we use it in court?" She shook her head. Said, "Legally. No. It was obtained without a warrant. I accessed it without authorization. Technically, I stole department property when I copied that backup drive. Any lawyer would have it thrown out in 5 seconds. I said, "So what good is it?" She said, "It's good for knowing the truth." And maybe if you know the truth, you can find legal evidence to support it. Find witnesses who saw the abuse. Find medical records that document the bruises. Find something that proves what these messages say. I took the folder. Thanked her. Started to leave. She stopped me. Said, "Jack, be careful. Marcus Webb isn't just some rich kid. His father has connections everywhere. Police, prosecutors, judges. You start making noise about this, and those connections will bury you." I said, "They already buried me once. Can't get much deeper." She said, "Yes, you can. Trust me. You can always go deeper." Ghost and I left. Drove to my apartment. Spread the messages out on my kitchen table. Read them over and over. Looked for patterns. Looked for anything that could help. Then I called Jennifer Park, Sarah's best friend, the maid of honor, the one who had tried to warn the police. She answered on the third ring. Sounded surprised to hear from me. Said she had given up hope anyone would ever follow up on Sarah's case. I told her I was following up now. Asked if she still had the text Sarah sent her. The one that said, "If anything happens to me, look at Marcus." She said, "I have it." Saved it. Screenshot it. Backed it up everywhere. Been waiting 4 years for someone to care. I asked if she would be willing to give a formal statement. She said, "I gave one 4 years ago. Nobody listened." I said, "I'm listening now." She said, "Are you even a cop anymore? I heard you retired." I said, "I did. But some cases don't let you retire." She was quiet. Then she said, "Come to my apartment. I'll show you everything." I drove to Ballard. Jennifer lived in a small apartment near the locks. Let me in without hesitation. Ghost followed. She had been expecting just me. Looked surprised to see the dog. I explained Ghost was my partner. She nodded. Said she understood. She pulled out a box from her closet. Said, "After Sarah died, I couldn't throw anything away. Kept everything she ever gave me. Every photo. Every note. Every memory. Her family wanted it all, but I kept copies." She opened the box. Inside were photos of Sarah. Smiling. Happy. Full of life. Then she showed me other photos. Ones she said she took without Sarah knowing. Photos that showed bruises on Sarah's arms. On her wrists. On her neck. Hidden under makeup. Hidden under long sleeves. But visible if you knew where to look. Jennifer said, "She made me promise not to tell anyone. Said it would make things worse. Said Marcus would get better. Said he was just stressed about his father's campaign. But he didn't get better. He got worse." I asked if Sarah ever told her how she got the bruises. Jennifer said she always had excuses. Bumped into a door. Fell downstairs. Gym accident. But I knew. I could see it in her eyes. She was scared of him. I asked why Sarah didn't just leave. Jennifer said she tried. Multiple times. But every time she tried, Marcus would threaten her. Said he would ruin her career. Said he would tell medical school she was unstable. Said he would make sure nobody believed her. Said he had lawyers and money and connections. Said she had nothing. Sarah believed him. I asked about the engagement ring. About Sarah not wearing it. Jennifer said 2 months before she died, Sarah took it off. Said she couldn't wear it anymore. Said it felt like a chain. Like she was being owned. She hid it in a drawer. Marcus noticed. Demanded she put it back on. She refused. He grabbed her wrist. Twisted it. Put the ring back on her finger himself. Told her it stayed on until he said otherwise. I asked if Sarah ever went to the police. Jennifer shook her head. Said she talked about it. But Marcus told her his father knew everyone in the department. Knew the chief. Knew the mayor. Said if she filed a complaint, it would disappear. Said she would be the one who got in trouble. Said nobody crosses the Webb family. I felt sick. Because Marcus was right. His father did have connections. Did have power. Did have the ability to make problems disappear. I had seen it firsthand. Jennifer said, the night before Sarah died she called me. 3 a.m. Crying. Said she had made a decision. Said she was going to break it off. Said she was going to move out. Said she didn't care what Marcus did. She was done. I told her to be careful. Told her to do it in public. Told her to have people around. She said she would. Said she loved me. Said thank you for being her friend. That was the last time I talked to her. I asked what Jennifer thought happened. She didn't hesitate. Said Marcus killed her. I don't know how. I don't know if he did it himself or hired someone. But he killed her. I'm sure of it. And you were supposed to prove it. You were supposed to get justice for her. But you didn't. I had no defense. She was right. I had failed. I asked if she would be willing to testify. To go on record with everything she told me. She said, to who? The police don't care. The prosecutors don't care. The system doesn't care. Why would testifying change anything? I said, because this time I'm not backing down. This time I don't care about my pension or my career or what the deputy chief says. This time I'm seeing it through. She looked at me for a long time. Then at Ghost. Then back at me. Said, you really mean that? I said, I really mean that. She said, then yes. I'll testify. I'll give you everything I have. I'll do whatever it takes. Because Sarah deserves justice. Even if it's 4 years late. I took photos of everything in the box. Documented the bruises. The dates. The timeline. Then I asked Jennifer one more question. I said, did Sarah ever mention where Marcus was the night she died? Jennifer frowned. Said, he was at his father's fundraiser. That was his alibi. Everyone saw him there. I said, was he there the whole time? She said, that's what everyone said. But. She stopped. Looked uncertain. I said, but what? She said, Sarah told me something weird. 2 days before she died. Said Marcus had been bragging about how smart he was. How he had everything figured out. How he could be in 2 places at once, if he needed to be. Said he was laughing about it. Like it was a joke. But Sarah didn't think it was funny. She thought it was creepy. I felt my pulse quicken. Said, did she say anything else? Jennifer shook her head. Said just that. That Marcus said he could be in 2 places at once. I didn't think anything of it at the time. Thought it was just Marcus being arrogant. But now. She didn't finish the sentence. Didn't need to. We were both thinking the same thing. What if Marcus had found a way? What if his alibi wasn't as airtight as everyone thought? What if he had been at the fundraiser and at Sarah's apartment? What if he really could be in 2 places at once? Ghost and I left Jennifer's apartment. Drove back to mine. I pulled out the case file again. Looked at the timeline. Marcus was at the fundraiser from 6:50 p.m. to 12:05 a.m. Sarah died between 9 and 11 p.m. 40 minutes away from the fundraiser to her apartment. Even if he left the fundraiser at 9, it would be 9:40 before he could get there. And he would have to be back by 10:40 to maintain his alibi. That gave him 1 hour. Barely enough time. But the security footage showed him at the fundraiser the entire time. Multiple cameras. Multiple angles. Timestamped. Unless. I pulled up the footage. The same footage I had watched 4 years ago. Watched Marcus arrive. Watched him work the room. Watched him give his speech at 8:30. Watched him talk to donors. Watched him pose for photos. Then, I noticed something I hadn't noticed before. At 9:15, Marcus went to the bathroom. Camera lost him for 8 minutes. Normal. People use bathrooms. But then at 9:42, Marcus was back on camera. Talking to the mayor. Smiling. Laughing. Looking perfectly composed. Like he had been there the whole time. I watched it again. Slowed it down. Looked at every detail. Marcus at 9:14. Blue tie. Hair perfect. Face clean shaven. Marcus at 9:42. Blue tie. Hair perfect. Face clean shaven. Everything exactly the same. Too same. Nobody looks exactly the same after half an hour at an event. Hair gets messier. Tie gets loosened. Face gets tired. But Marcus looked identical. Like someone had copy and pasted him into the frame. I called Riley. Woke her up. Didn't care. Said, I need you to analyze security footage. Need you to tell me if it's been edited. She groaned. Said, Jack, it's 1 a.m. I said, I know. This can't wait. She said, fine. Send it over. I sent the files. Waited. Paced my apartment. Ghost watched me. Patient as always. 30 minutes later, my phone rang. Riley said, holy shit, Jack. I said, what? She said, the footage was edited. Professionally. Very professionally. But edited. Someone looped a section. Made it look like Marcus was at the fundraiser, when he wasn't. I said, can you prove it? She said, I can prove it to you. Can I prove it in court? Maybe. Depends on if they still have the original files. Depends on if whoever did this left a trail. I said, how long was he gone? She said, based on the loop. About 45 minutes. From 9:15 to 10 o'clock. I did the math. 9:15 leave fundraiser. 9:55 arrive at Sarah's apartment. Kill her. Stage it to look like overdose. 10:40 leave apartment. 11:25 back at fundraiser. Tight timeline. But possible. Very possible. I said, he did it, Riley. He killed her. And he made everyone think he couldn't have. She said, looks that way. But Jack, proving this is going to be hard. Whoever edited that footage knew what they were doing. Professional level work. This wasn't Marcus using an iPhone app. This was serious tech. I said, who could do that? She said, someone with access to the security company. Someone with access to the original files. Someone with money and connections. I said, Marcus's father. She said, that would be my guess. I hung up. Looked at Ghost. Said, we got him, boy. We finally got him. Ghost tail wagged once. Just once. But it was enough. The next morning I did something I hadn't done in 4 years. I put on my old suit. The one I wore to court when I had to testify. The one that made me look like someone who mattered. Someone who could get justice. I looked at myself in the mirror. Older. Grayer. More tired. But also more determined. Ghost sat by the door. Ready. Always ready. I drove to the Seattle Police Department. Walked in like I still belonged there. Got looks from officers I used to know. Some nodded. Some looked away. Everyone knew why I had left. Everyone knew I had quit rather than play the game. The desk sergeant looked surprised to see me. Said, Jack Harper. Didn't think we'd see you again. I said, need to speak to someone in homicide. He said, about what? I said, a cold case. He picked up the phone. Made a call. Told me to wait. 20 minutes later, a detective came down. Young guy. Maybe 30. Looked like he had just made detective 6 months ago. Eager. Hungry. Still believed he could make a difference. His name was Torres. Said, you're Jack Harper. Heard about you. Heard you were a good detective. I said, was. Past tense. He said, what can I do for you? I told him about Sarah Chen, about the messages, about the edited security footage, about Marcus Webb and his fake alibi. I laid it all out. Every piece, every detail, everything I had found. He listened, took notes, looked interested. Then he said, "This is good work. Really good work." "But," I said, "but what?" He said, "But half of this evidence is inadmissible. The phone data was obtained illegally. The security footage analysis was done by a private citizen without a warrant. The statements from the friend are 4 years old and considered hearsay unless she testifies. And even if she does, the defense will tear her apart." I said, "So what do we do?" He said, "We would need to reopen the case officially. Get a warrant for Marcus Webb's current phone. Subpoena the security company for the original footage. Interview everyone again. Build a case from scratch that follows proper procedure." I said, "How long would that take?" He said, "Months. Maybe a year. And that's if we get approval to reopen. Which we probably won't." I said, "Why not?" He said, "Because Marcus Webb's father is now State Senator Webb. Because he sits on the Judiciary Committee. Because he has more power now than he did 4 years ago. Because the department is not going to want to touch this." I felt my jaw tighten. Said, "So that's it. He gets away with murder because his father is powerful." Torres looked uncomfortable. Said, "I didn't say that. I said it's complicated." I stood up. Said, "It's not complicated. It's simple. Marcus Webb killed Sarah Chen. We have evidence. We have motive. We have opportunity. We have everything except the will to do our jobs." Torres said, "I understand your frustration. But I have to follow procedure. I have to do this by the book." I said, "The book got Sarah Chen killed. The book lets murderers walk free. The book protects people with power and buries people without it. Maybe it's time to close the book." I walked out. Ghost followed. I heard Torres call after me. Heard him say something about not doing anything stupid. Too late for that. I had already decided. If the system wouldn't get justice for Sarah Chen, then I would. Outside the legal system. Outside the rules. Outside everything that had failed her. I drove to Marcus Webb's office. Downtown Seattle. 10th floor of a glass tower. Webb Development Company. His name on the door. Vice President. I walked past the receptionist. Ignored her protests. Pushed open Marcus's office door. He was on the phone. Looked up. Saw me. Told whoever he was talking to he would call them back. Said, "Jack Harper. I was wondering when you would show up." I closed the door behind me. Ghost sat beside me. Marcus looked nervous but tried to hide it. Said, "You can't be here. This is private property. I'm calling security." I said, "Go ahead. Call them. But first you're going to listen." He put down the phone. Said, "Fine. Talk. But make it quick. I have a meeting." I said, 4 years ago you killed Sarah Chen." He laughed. Said, "That's insane. I was at a fundraiser. Hundreds of witnesses. Video footage. You saw the evidence." I said, "I saw edited footage. I saw a loop that covered the 45 minutes you were gone. The 45 minutes you were at Sarah's apartment. Injecting her with fentanyl. Staging her death. Then coming back to the fundraiser like nothing happened." His face went pale. Just for a second. Then he recovered. Said, "That's an interesting theory. Do you have proof?" I said, "I have the text messages. The ones you thought were deleted. The ones where you threatened her. Told her nobody leaves you. Told her she would regret trying." He stood up. Said, "Those messages are fake. Deep fakes. Anyone can create those now. No court would accept them." I said, I have witnesses. Jennifer Park will testify about the abuse, about the bruises, about Sarah's fear. He said, Jennifer is a liar. She was jealous of Sarah, wanted her to break up with me. Her testimony is worthless. I said, I have the security footage analysis. Proof it was edited. Proof you weren't at the fundraiser the whole time. He smiled. Said, done by who? An unlicensed private analyst. Using illegal methods. Without a warrant. That evidence would be thrown out in 5 seconds. And even if it wasn't, my father knows the best lawyers in the state. They would make it disappear. I said, you really think you're going to get away with this? He said, I already got away with it. 4 years ago. You couldn't stop me then. You can't stop me now. The system works for people like me, Jack. Not people like you. I have money. I have power. I have connections. What do you have? A dead career and a dog. I felt my fists clench. Felt Ghost tense beside me. Marcus saw it. Said, go ahead. Hit me. Give me a reason to have you arrested for assault. Give me a reason to take away what little you have left. I took a breath. Forced myself to calm down. Said, I'm not going to hit you, Marcus. I'm going to do something worse. I'm going to make sure everyone knows what you did. I'm going to tell Sarah's story. I'm going to tell it to reporters, to bloggers, to anyone who will listen. I'm going to make you famous for all the wrong reasons. He laughed. Said, no one will believe you. No one will care. This is old news. Ancient history. Nobody cares about a dead girl from 4 years ago. They care about what's happening now. And right now I'm a successful businessman. My father is a state senator. We're important. You're nobody. I said, Sarah Chen was somebody. She mattered. And I'm going to make sure people remember that. I turned to leave. Marcus said, Jack. I stopped. He said, if you keep pushing this, I will destroy you. I will make sure you lose your pension. I will make sure you get charged with harassment, stalking, illegal investigation. I will make sure you end up in jail. And Ghost. He said, be a shame if something happened to that dog. Animal control gets calls all the time about aggressive German shepherds. Sometimes those dogs have to be put down. I turned back. Looked at him. Really looked at him. Saw the monster underneath the expensive suit. The monster Sarah had seen. The monster she had tried to escape. I said, you just made a mistake, Marcus. He said, what mistake? I said, threatening Ghost. Sarah couldn't fight back. But I can. And I will. I walked out. This time I didn't look back. Outside the building I sat in my car. Hands shaking. Not from fear. From rage. Pure unfiltered rage. Ghost put his head on my lap. That simple gesture. That reminder that I wasn't alone. I called Riley. Said, I need your help with something. She said, what now? I said, I need you to go public with everything. The messages. The footage analysis. Everything we found. She said, Jack, that could cost me my business. My reputation. Everything. I said, I know. And I wouldn't ask if there was any other way. But Marcus just threatened Ghost. Threatened to have him killed. And I'm done playing by rules that only protect murderers. She was quiet for a long time. Then she said, send me everything you have. Every photo. Every document. Every piece of evidence. I'll put together a package. Send it to every news outlet in the state. Make it impossible to ignore. I said, you're sure? She said, no. But Sarah Chen deserves better than silence. And sometimes you have to break the rules to get justice. I hung up. Looked at Ghost. Said, we're going to finish this boy. One way or another. He looked back at me with those amber eyes. Those eyes that had never doubted, never given up, never stopped believing. And I realized something. For 4 years I had been a ghost, haunting my own life, going through the motions, pretending I was retired, pretending I was done. But I was never done. Some cases stay with you. Some victims never let go. Some ghosts follow you until you finally do what you were meant to do. Get justice. Riley worked fast. Within 2 days, every news outlet in Seattle had received an anonymous package. Text messages between Marcus Webb and Sarah Chen. Analysis of the security footage showing the edited timestamps. Jennifer Park's witness statement. Photos of Sarah's bruises. A timeline that proved Marcus had motive, means, and opportunity. The story broke on a Tuesday morning. Local news first. Then picked up by regional outlets. Then national. Marcus Webb, rising political sun accused of murder. The Webb family issued a statement immediately. Called it a smear campaign. Called it politically motivated. Called it an attempt to damage Senator Webb's reputation before an important vote. They threatened to sue anyone who published the allegations. Most outlets backed off. But not all of them. One investigative reporter from the Seattle Times dug deeper. Contacted Jennifer Park directly. Interviewed Sarah's mother. Talked to Sarah's professors and classmates. Built an independent story that corroborated everything we had found. That story ran on Friday. It was devastating. Detailed. Damning. Showed a pattern of abuse. Control. Violence. Ended with a question: why was this case closed so quickly? That question got the police commissioner's attention. By Monday morning, the department announced they were reopening the Sarah Chen investigation. Assigning fresh detectives. Would follow the evidence wherever it led. By Tuesday, Marcus Webb's office released a statement saying he was taking a leave of absence from the family company to focus on clearing his name. By Wednesday, Senator Webb announced he was recusing himself from all committee work until the matter was resolved, to avoid any appearance of impropriety. By Thursday, Marcus Webb's lawyer held a press conference. Said his client maintained his innocence. Said the evidence against him was obtained illegally. Said they would fight this in court and prove Marcus had nothing to do with Sarah's death. By Friday, Ghost and I were sitting in Detective Torres's office. He looked tired. Said, "You created a firestorm, Jack." I said, "I created accountability." He said, "The deputy chief is furious. Says you contaminated the case. Says anything we find now will be challenged because of your illegal investigation." I said, "Then find something legal. Re-interview witnesses. Get warrants. Do the work that should have been done 4 years ago." He said, "We are. But it's complicated. Marcus has the best defense team money can buy. They're already filing motions to suppress evidence, claiming prosecutorial misconduct, trying to get the case thrown out before it even starts." I said, "Will it work?" He said, "Maybe. Probably. Unless we find something new. Something that wasn't touched by your investigation. Something that proves beyond doubt that Marcus killed her." I said, "Like what?" He said, "Like a witness who saw him leave the fundraiser. Like DNA evidence we missed the first time. Like a confession." "Good luck with that." I stood up to leave. Torres said, "Jack." I stopped. He said, off the record, "Thank you. For not letting this go. For giving Sarah Chen a chance at justice. Even if it costs you everything." I said, "It already cost me everything. Might as well be worth it." Ghost and I left the station. Drove home. My phone had been ringing non-stop for days. Reporters. Lawyers. Former colleagues. I ignored them all. Except one call. From Sarah's mother. I answered. Said, Mrs. Chen. She was crying. Said, thank you. Thank you for not forgetting my daughter. Thank you for fighting when everyone else gave up. Thank you for giving her a voice. I didn't know what to say. Settled for, I'm sorry it took so long. She said, you're the only one who tried. The only one who cared. That means everything to me. She hung up. I sat in my car. Let myself feel it. The weight lifting. Just a little. Not gone. Would never be gone. But lighter. 2 weeks later, the Seattle Police Department held a press conference. Detective Torres stood at a podium. Multiple cameras. Reporters shouting questions. He said, after a thorough reinvestigation of the Sarah Chen case, we have determined there is sufficient evidence to charge Marcus Webb with second-degree murder. A warrant has been issued for his arrest. We expect him to surrender to authorities within 24 hours. The room erupted. Questions flying. Torres held up a hand. Said, we will not be taking questions at this time. But I will say this. This case should never have been closed. Sarah Chen deserved better. Her family deserved better. And today, we're taking the first step toward giving them justice. I watched it from home. Ghost beside me on the couch. For the first time in 4 years, I felt something I didn't recognize at first. Then I realized what it was. Hope. Marcus turned himself in the next day. Made a show of it. Walked into the police station with his lawyers. Cameras everywhere. Said, I am innocent. I loved Sarah. I would never hurt her. The truth will come out. He was arraigned. Pleaded not guilty. Released on $1 million bail. Electronic monitoring. Surrender of passport. Ordered to stay away from witnesses. The trial was set for 6 months out. During those 6 months things happened. Small things. But important. A security guard from the Rainier Club came forward. Said he had seen Marcus leave through a side exit at 9:20 p.m., the night of Sarah's death. Said Marcus had asked him not to mention it. Said Marcus had given him $500. Said he had stayed quiet because he needed the job. But after seeing the news, he couldn't live with himself anymore. A neighbor from Sarah's apartment building came forward. Said she had seen a man matching Marcus's description in the hallway around 10 p.m. that night. Thought nothing of it at the time. Assumed it was a resident. But now she wasn't sure. A forensic analyst found something in the original autopsy photos. A fiber on Sarah's clothing. Fiber that matched the carpet in Marcus's BMW. Fiber that shouldn't have been there if he had really been at the fundraiser all night. The case grew stronger. Piece by piece. Witness by witness. Evidence by evidence. Marcus's lawyers tried to get it dismissed. Filed motion after motion. Argued that the investigation was tainted. That my involvement had corrupted everything. That the evidence should be thrown out. The judge disagreed. Said, while Mr. Harper's methods were unorthodox, the subsequent police investigation was conducted properly. The new evidence stands on its own. The trial will proceed. I wasn't allowed to testify. Tainted witness. Compromised investigation. But I attended every day. Sat in the back. Ghost beside me. Watched as the prosecution laid out their case. The text messages. The threats. The abuse. The security footage analysis. The witnesses who saw Marcus leave. The fiber evidence. The motive. The opportunity. The means. Watched as Marcus sat there. Stone-faced. Confident. Surrounded by lawyers who cost more than most people make in a lifetime. Watched as Jennifer Park took the stand. Told Sarah's story. Showed the photos of bruises. Described the fear. The control. The threats. Cried when she talked about the last phone call. About Sarah saying she was going to break it off. About how she never got the chance. Watched as Sarah's mother took the stand. Described her daughter. Brilliant. Kind. Full of life. Described getting the call that Sarah was dead. Described being told it was suicide. Described not believing it. Described begging the police to investigate. Described being ignored. The prosecution rested after 2 weeks. The defense took 1 day. Put Marcus on the stand. He denied everything. Said the text messages were taken out of context. Said Sarah was emotional. Dramatic. Said they fought sometimes, but all couples do. Said he loved her. Said he would never hurt her. Said he was at the fundraiser all night. Said the witnesses were mistaken or lying. Said the fiber evidence was contaminated. Said this was all a witch hunt. A political attack on his family. Said he was innocent. The jury deliberated for 3 days. On the 3rd day they came back. The foreman stood. The judge asked, "Has the jury reached a verdict?" The foreman said, "We have, Your Honor." The judge said, "On the charge of murder in the 2nd degree, how do you find?" The foreman said, "We find the defendant Marcus Webb guilty." The courtroom erupted. Sarah's mother collapsed in tears. Jennifer Park grabbed her hand. Held on. Marcus's face went white. His lawyers immediately started talking about appeals. The judge banged his gavel. Called for order. Set sentencing for 3 weeks out. I walked outside. Ghost beside me. Stood on the courthouse steps. Let the sun hit my face. Detective Torres found me. Said, "You did it, Jack. You got justice for Sarah Chen." I said, "We did it. All of us. Everyone who refused to let her be forgotten." He said, "What will you do now?" I said, "I don't know. For 4 years I've been focused on this. Haven't thought past it." He said, "You ever think about coming back to the force?" I laughed. Said, "They'd never take me back. Not after everything I did." He said, "Things change. People change. Departments change. Maybe there's a place for someone who cares more about justice than politics." I said, "Maybe. I'll think about it." I walked away. Ghost beside me. Always beside me. Drove home. Sat on my couch. Looked at the case file that had been sitting on my coffee table for months. Sarah Chen. Age 23. Deceased. Case closed. Finally. Actually closed. Justice served. I picked up the file. Thought about burning it. Thought about letting it go. Then I saw another file underneath. Thin. Old. Yellow with age. I picked it up. Read the name. Emily Rodriguez. Age 19. Found dead in her apartment. 6 years ago. Ruled accidental overdose. Case closed. But her mother never believed it. Had written to the department multiple times. Had been ignored. Had given up hope. I looked at Ghost. He looked back at me. That look. The one that said, "You know what you have to do." I opened the file. Started reading. Some ghosts don't let you rest. Some victims wait for someone to care. Some cases need someone who refuses to quit. Ghost put his head on my lap. That simple gesture. That reminder. We're not done. We're never done. As long as there are ghosts, there's work to do. I picked up my phone. Called Detective Torres. Said, "I've got another case you should look at." He sighed. But I could hear the smile in his voice. Said, "Of course you do. Send me the details." I hung up. Looked around my apartment. For 4 years this place had been a tomb. A place to hide. A place to forget. But it wasn't that anymore. It was command center. War room. The place where justice started. Ghost stretched. Yawned. Looked at me expectantly. I said, "Ready, boy." He stood up. Walked to the door. Waited. Always ready. Always waiting. Always believing that the next case could be solved. That the next victim could get justice. That the next ghost could finally rest. I grabbed my jacket. My keys. The Emily Rodriguez file. Headed for the door. Stopped. Looked back at my apartment one more time. At the place I had spent 3 years dying slowly. At the place that had almost become my grave. Then I walked out. Into the light. Into the world. Into whatever came next. Because retirement was over. The work was just beginning. And some cops never really quit. They just wait for the right ghost to remind them who they are. 3 months after Marcus Webb was sentenced to 25 years to life, something happened that I didn't expect. The police commissioner called me personally. Said he wanted to meet. I figured it was about a lawsuit. About me interfering with an investigation. About all the rules I broke. About all the procedures I ignored. I met him at a coffee shop in Pike Place Market. Neutral ground. Public. He was late 50s. Gray hair. Tired eyes. The look of someone who had seen too much and compromised too often. He ordered coffee. So did I. We sat. He said, "I've been reviewing your career, Jack. 22 years. Solid detective work. High solve rate. Good instincts. Then you quit." I said, "I'm sure you know why." He said, "I do. You were told to let the Sarah Chen case go. You refused. You got pushed out." I said nothing. He said, "That should never have happened. You were doing your job. You were trying to get justice for a victim. And the department failed you." I said, "The department failed Sarah Chen." He nodded. Said, "Yes. And I'm sorry for that. Sorry, it took a civilian investigation to do what we should have done 4 years ago." I said, "Is this an apology?" He said, "It's an acknowledgement. And an offer." I said, "What kind of offer?" He said, "Come back. Not as a regular detective. As something different. Something the department needs." I said, "What's that?" He said, "A cold case investigator. Someone who looks at old cases. Cases that were closed too quickly. Cases that deserve another look. Cases where politics or pressure or incompetence got in the way of justice. You would report directly to me. No bureaucracy. No politics. Just you and your instincts and your refusal to quit." I stared at him. Said, "You want to hire me to do what I just did. Break rules. Ignore procedures. Make the department look bad." He said, "I want to hire you to get justice. However you can. Within legal bounds, but with more freedom than a regular detective gets. Because the truth is, Jack, we have dozens of cases like Sarah Chen. Cases where families are still waiting. Still wondering. Still hoping someone will care enough to look again. And you proved you're that someone." I said, "What about my methods? What about the illegal phone data? The unauthorized investigations? All of that?" He said, "Your methods were problematic. But they led to a conviction. They led to justice. And sometimes that's what matters. Obviously, you can't break the law. Can't obtain evidence illegally. But you can push harder than others. Ask questions others won't. Follow leads others ignore. And you have something most detectives don't." I said, "What's that?" He said, "You have nothing to lose. You already quit once. Already walked away. You're not worried about promotions or politics or pensions. You just want to solve cases. That makes you dangerous. And valuable." I said, "What about Ghost?" He smiled. Said, "Ghost comes too. Best K9 the department ever had. Shouldn't have been forced into retirement. We'll bring him back officially. Full benefits. Medical care. The works." I looked out the window. Watched people walking by. Tourists. Locals. Everyone going about their lives. Unaware of the ghosts that walked among them. The unsolved cases. The forgotten victims. The families still waiting. I thought about Sarah Chen. About her mother. About Jennifer Park. About all the people who had waited 4 years for someone to care. I thought about Emily Rodriguez. About the file sitting on my coffee table. About all the other files like hers. About all the other ghosts waiting for someone to notice them. I said, I have conditions. He said, name them. I said, I work alone. No partner except Ghost. No one looking over my shoulder. No one second-guessing my instincts. He said, agreed. I said, I pick the cases. Nobody tells me what to investigate or what to drop. If I think a case deserves a second look, I get to pursue it. He said, within reason. I said, no. Not within reason. I pursue it. Period. If powerful people get uncomfortable, that's their problem. If the department gets embarrassed, that's your problem. My only job is finding the truth. He thought about it. Then nodded. Said, agreed. But Jack, he said, you can't break the law. Can't obtain evidence illegally. Can't put us in a position where cases get thrown out because of constitutional violations. I can give you freedom, but I can't give you immunity. I said, fair enough. I'll stay inside the lines. Mostly. He smiled. Said, mostly is what I'm afraid of. But it's also why you're perfect for this. When can you start? I said, I already started. 3 months ago. He said, then let's make it official. I shook his hand. Walked out of that coffee shop with a badge again. Not the same badge. A new one. Special Investigator. Cold Case Division. It felt heavier than my old badge. More weight. More responsibility. More ghosts depending on me. I drove home. Walked inside. Ghost was waiting. I showed him the badge. Said, we're back in business, boy. Official this time. He wagged his tail. That one deliberate wag that meant approval. I pulled out the Emily Rodriguez file. Spread it on my coffee table. Started reading. 19 years old. Found dead in her apartment. Massive overdose. No history of drug use. Boyfriend had alibi. Family didn't believe it. Police closed it in 3 days. 6 years ago. Sound familiar? I started making notes. Started building a timeline. Started seeing the holes. The questions that should have been asked. The leads that should have been followed. Ghost watched me work. Patient. Present. My phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. A woman's voice. Shaking. Said, is this Jack Harper? The detective who solved the Sarah Chen case. I said, yes. She said, my name is Maria Santos. My sister was killed 8 years ago. Police said it was suicide. But I know it wasn't. I know someone murdered her. And nobody will listen to me. Nobody cares. I've called the police 100 times. Written letters. Begged for help. But they say the case is closed. That there's nothing they can do. Then I saw the news about you. About how you wouldn't give up. About how you got justice for Sarah Chen. And I thought. She said, maybe you could help me. Maybe you could look at my sister's case. Maybe you could be the one who finally listens. I grabbed a pen. Said, tell me everything. She talked for an hour. About her sister Rosa. 24 years old. Found hanging in her apartment. Ruled suicide. But Rosa had no history of depression. No note. No signs. Had just gotten a promotion at work. Was planning a vacation. Was happy. But she had recently broken up with her boyfriend. Boyfriend who had been arrested twice for domestic violence. Boyfriend who had threatened her. Boyfriend who had an alibi the night she died. Boyfriend whose father was a police captain. I wrote it all down. Every detail. Every inconsistency. Every reason to doubt the official story. When she finished, I said, "Maria, I'm going to look into this. I'm going to review the case file. And if I find what I think I'm going to find, if there's evidence this wasn't suicide, if someone hurt your sister," I said, "I'm going to get you justice. Just like I got justice for Sarah Chen." She started crying. Said, "Thank you. Thank you. Nobody has ever." She couldn't finish. Didn't need to. I hung up. Looked at Ghost. Said, "Another one, boy." He didn't look surprised. Of course, there was another one. There would always be another one. That's what I was realizing. Sarah Chen wasn't an isolated case. She was one of many. One of dozens. Maybe hundreds. Cases that got closed too quickly. Because the suspect was connected. Because the department was lazy. Because nobody wanted to deal with complications. Because powerful people made problems disappear. And the victims. They became ghosts. Forgotten. Erased. Like they never mattered. But they did matter. Rosa Santos mattered. Emily Rodriguez mattered. And all the others waiting in cold case files mattered. I was about to find out how many others there were. Over the next 3 months, I received 47 calls. 47 families. 47 victims. 47 cases that had been closed but never solved. Suicides that weren't suicides. Accidents that weren't accidents. Overdoses that didn't make sense. All of them young women. All of them with boyfriends or ex-boyfriends who had been cleared. All of them with families who knew something was wrong but couldn't prove it. I couldn't take all 47 cases. Didn't have time. Didn't have resources. Had to prioritize. I picked 5. The 5 where the evidence screamed murder, but the department had looked the other way. The 5 where powerful people had made things disappear. The 5 where families had been waiting the longest. Emily Rodriguez. Rosa Santos. Michelle Tran. Keisha Williams. Amanda Chen. No relation to Sarah, but the name felt like a sign. Ghost and I went to work. Case by case. Lead by lead. Question by question. We found things. Hidden phones. Edited security footage. Witnesses who had been ignored. Evidence that had been mishandled. We found patterns. The same lazy assumptions. The same rush to close cases. The same deference to power. We found justice. One case at a time. Emily Rodriguez. Her boyfriend had hired someone to kill her. Made it look like an overdose. We proved it. He's serving life now. Rosa Santos. Her ex-boyfriend had strangled her. Staged it as suicide. We proved it. He's serving 25 years. Michelle Tran. Her husband had poisoned her slowly over months. Made it look like natural causes. We proved it. He's serving life. Keisha Williams. Her boyfriend had pushed her downstairs. Made it look like an accident. We proved it. He's serving 15 years. Amanda Chen. Her ex had broken into her apartment. Killed her. Made it look like a robbery gone wrong. We proved it. He's serving life. 5 families got justice. 5 victims got their voices back. 5 murderers who thought they were untouchable learned they weren't. The department held a press conference. The commissioner stood at the podium. Said, "In the past year, our cold case division has solved 5 murders that had been misclassified. 5 families have received closure. 5 killers are now behind bars. This is the work of Special Investigator Jack Harper and his K-9 partner Ghost. Their dedication and refusal to accept easy answers has brought justice to victims who deserved better than they got." I watched from the back of the room. Didn't want attention. Didn't want credit. Just wanted the work to continue. After the press conference, Detective Torres found me. Said, "You're making the rest of us look bad, Jack." I said, "Good. Maybe it will motivate you to work harder." He laughed. Said, "You know there are more cases, right? More families calling. More victims waiting." I said, "I know." He said, "You can't solve them all." I said, "I can try." He said, "What happens when you can't? When the evidence is too old? When witnesses are dead? When you hit a wall?" I said, "Then at least they'll know someone tried. At least they'll know their loved one mattered. At least they won't spend the rest of their lives wondering if anyone cared." That night, Ghost and I sat in my apartment. 5 case files closed, stacked neatly on my desk. 5 families with answers. 5 victims with justice. But 42 more files waiting. 42 more families hoping. 42 more ghosts wanting someone to care. I looked at Ghost. Said, "You know this never ends, right? This work. These cases. There will always be more." He looked back at me with those amber eyes. Those eyes that said, "I know. And I'm okay with that. Are you?" I thought about it. Thought about the past year. The work. The exhaustion. The emotional toll of diving into case after case of violence and loss. Thought about Sarah Chen's mother. The way she had thanked me. The peace in her eyes. Thought about Maria Santos. The way her voice had sounded when I told her we had arrested her sister's killer. Like a weight had been lifted. Like she could finally breathe. Thought about all the families still waiting. Still hoping. Still needing someone to fight for them. I said, "Yeah, boy. I'm okay with that." Ghost put his head on my lap. That gesture. That simple reminder. We're in this together. Always. I picked up the next file from the stack. Jennifer Wu. 21 years old. Found dead in her car. Carbon monoxide poisoning. Ruled suicide. Family says she would never. Boyfriend was cleared. Father is a judge. Case closed 7 years ago. I opened the file. Started reading. Started seeing the holes. Started planning the investigation. Outside my window, Seattle was getting dark. People going home. Going to dinner. Going about their lives. Unaware of the ghosts among them. But I was aware. Ghost was aware. And we weren't going to stop. Not for retirement. Not for exhaustion. Not for anything. Because some work never ends. Some ghosts never rest. And some cops, the real ones, the ones who remember why they put on the badge in the first place. They don't quit. They adapt. They evolve. They find new ways to fight. New ways to get justice. New ways to give voice to the voiceless. I looked at Ghost. Said, "Ready for another one, boy." He stood up. Walked to the door. Waited. Always ready. Always waiting. Always believing. I grabbed my jacket. My keys. The Jennifer Wu file. Headed out into the night. A retired cop who wasn't retired anymore. A K-9 who refused to quit. And somewhere out there, another ghost waiting. Another family hoping. Another chance to prove that justice isn't just a word. It's a promise. And I intended to keep it.